Now is the time, my brothers, the season of the burrow. I'll admit it, dude. I dug a hole under my shed, been hanging out with a groundhog in there. It's surprisingly cool and comfortable, alright? In that vein, let's talk about Helga, Skittish Seer. Now listen, man, you want a commander deck that can win, that does stuff, that's fun for newer players, is cheap to build. I submit to you Helga's Skittish Seer. Let's dive in, dude, but first, take a look at these ultimate chads right here, dude. These are the patrons. They're walking around the earth right now. Gods among men, lions among the chattel. Join the Discord, like and subscribe. Helga, Skittish Seer, green, white, and a blue for a legendary creature, Frog Druid. It's a 1/3. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4 or greater, you draw a card, gain 1 life, put a +1/+1 counter on Helga. Doesn't stop there though, dude. Has tap, add X mana of any one color, where X is Helga Skittish Seer's power. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells with mana value 4 or greater, or creature spells with X in their mana costs. Alright, first things first here, brother. We're going to build a budget deck around an unreleased commander. We build a shell around it, right? The pre-release cost is not factored in because they are wildly high right now. Also, stuff goes up and down, you know? I can only attest to what the shell is on the day that I make it. So you have a couple things going on here. There are cards that put extra +1/+1 counters on things, cards that manipulate counters that I think we can safely slot in. We also have a mana dork stapled to some card draw in the command zone, which can be super powerful. It's also 3 mana, but has no protection, fairly fragile. By itself, this will not win you the game. There needs to be some powerful creatures that utilize those value engines. Now you do have a bit of a restriction on this mana. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells with mana value 4 or greater, or creature spells with X in their mana cost. That means cards like Freed from the Real, Umbral Mantle, Pemenzora won't work with this creature, except in the traditional non-infinite way. Now say lands you control can produce a 4 blue mana, and Helga's tapping for a modest 5. That's still 15 mana you can use to cast creature spells with mana value 4 or X cost creatures. It's still pretty huge. You might want to think about sticking those types of cards in. You can also combo these cards with Bloomburrow, Elder, and Arixmethes, so they may be worth the slot for incidental combo. Your mileage may vary, of course. There's also a pretty useful enchantment that kind of goes nutso if you build into +1/+1 counters, and that's Simic Ascendancy. Green and a blue for an enchantment, 1 green and a blue, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if it has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. 55 cents for this. It is fairly fragile. You need to wait for your upkeep, but adding counters to your commander or some of the other cards in this deck for 3 mana can be super useful as well. Now, of course, there are a bunch of cards that increase the counters we're putting on things like we alluded to before. Hardened Scales, Lae'zel, romantic partner from Baldur's Gate 3. She's got that lean, almost frog-like look to her, dude. I love that. Most saliently, Kami of Whispered Hopes. This is a mana dork as well. Tap, add X mana of any one color, where X is Kami of Whispered Hopes power. Huge fan of this card. Baby Juggles, we call her around this house, dude. Now there are some others. I was trying to keep this deck under $100. Came in at $86.27, not including the commander. But then we have Conclave Mentor, of course. Love that little centaur. I'm a fan of centaurs, dude. I'm a fan of monitors, you know, centaurs, shark people, whatever it is, dude, from One Piece. Any animal mixed with people, you know, it kind of gets me going, dude. And of course, the Defiler of Vigor, the big snake, dude. That was my nickname back in college. 3 green creature, Phyrexian Worm. It's a 6/6 with trample. It's an additional cost to cast green permanent spells. You may pay 2 life. Those spells cost green less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of green mana you paid, dude. Whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This card's about $2. Plays great with counters. Plays great with our commander. Come on, dude. Now there are also a number of creature cards that pay off casting larger creature cards, like Thrix the Sudden Storm, 3 blue, legendary creature, Elemental Giant. It's a 4/5, has flash and flying. Spells you cast with mana value 5 or greater cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered. If I grew my hair out, added some mutton chops, I'd look just like this fella. Then we have Goreclaw, Terror of the Quiznos, 3 and a green for a legendary creature bear. It's a 4/3. Creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. Whenever this guy attacks, each creature you control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1, gains trample until end of turn. Even better cost reduction here, man. Goreclaw is a house, 50 cents. Also grows our commander once it gets big enough. Then look at this guy, Ruinati, the Behemoth Caller, 2 and a green legendary creature, Cat Shaman. It's a 1/3. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 5 or greater, that creature enters the battlefield with X additional +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the mana value -4. Creatures you control with 3 or more +1/+1 counters on them have haste, has tap add green. Some of the larger creatures in this deck will come down with haste, and some of the X spells will get a giant boost. Rule 202.3e. When calculating the mana value of an object with X in its mana cost, X is treated as 0 while the object is not on the stack, and X is treated as the number chosen for it while the object is on the stack. So say you cast a Hydra whose mana cost is green and X equal to 6. Your mana value on the stack is 7. I think, dude, listen, I'm not an attorney, you know? I got my degree from a soggy box that I found, dude. Anyways, Golan, Caller of the Wirewood, 2 and a green for a legendary creature, Elf Druid. It's a 1/2, has tap add green. When you spend this mana to cast a spell with mana value 6 or greater, draw a card. Pretty awesome card right there, dude. Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia, 2 and a green, legendary creature, Elf Druid Scout. It's a 2/3, has tap at 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of a creature or creature card. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 5 or greater, untap Gwenna, put a +1/+1 counter on it. I've had this add 4-6 mana a turn sometimes. Crazy good card. Now, Emodi's Celebrant of Bounty is an interesting one. 3 and green and a blue, legendary creature, Snake Druid. It's a 3/1, has Cascade. Spells you cast with mana value 6 or greater have Cascade. Now, this can backfire if you turn over a Hydra type spell because X is going to be 0 in that case. Your mileage may vary depending on how many X spells you pack in. If you're just packing in big creatures, this could be a good include. Then we have the old Hulin, the Teller of Tales. I don't know if that's how you say it, man. I just say Chulane, dude. 2 green and a blue and a white for a legendary creature, Human Druid. It's a 2/4, has Vigilance. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. Then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. 3 and tap, return target creature you control to its owner's hand. This was pricey until very recently. 50 cents right now, dude. In a creature-based deck, this guy does it all. Now, of course, you have Soul of the Harvest, Beast Whisperer. These are going to make sure our hand stays full. Creatures, and more creatures in this deck, man. Alright, so here we go. What are some fun, spicy includes? Gadwick the Wizened, X, blue, legendary creature, Human Wizard. It's a 3/3. When this guy enters the battlefield, draw X cards. Whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. It's just a damn wizard reading romance novels, dude. Look at what it says on this one. His tumescence beat hastily against his trousers. Thusly did her diaphanous shift tumble with the lazy restlessness of youth. Okay, Gadwick, settle down here, dude. Sometimes with this card, though, you are drawing your entire deck, putting everything out there if you make infinite mana with one of those combos we set up before. And in a Simic deck with a +1/+1 counters theme, you probably want to stick in Prime Speaker Zigana. 2 green, blue, legendary creature, Merfolk Wizard. It's a 1/1. Prime Speaker enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the greatest power among other creatures you control. When it enters the battlefield, draw cards equal to its power. I just love this card, man. It's such a house. Needs trample, but what can you say, man? And the Loyal Guardian here. 4 and a green, creature Rhino. It's a 4/4 with trample, has Lieutenant. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Oh man, here we go. This guy's literally putting his finger into a rhino's eye, dude. That's their secret +1 counter zone. Mercfiend Leech. So this is 5 mana for a creature horror. It's a 4/4. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other blue creatures you control get +1/+1. Untap all green and or blue creatures you control during each other player's untap step. This guy, man, listen, I bought a pretzel from this exact guy the other day. This guy triggers our commander, makes her bigger. The tap ability on Helga cares about her power, and this guy slaps that up too because the abilities are separate and cumulative. Rampaging Yaoguai. This is X green creature bear mutant. It's a 2/2 with vigilance and trample. This guy enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield, destroy any number of target artifacts and or enchantments with total mana value X or less. The art on this is so weird, man, but the effect is really good. X spell, modal, customizable, great fit in this deck, also great abilities, vigilance and trample. We also have Hamza, Guardian of Arashin, 4 green and a white, legendary creature, Elephant Warrior. It's a 5/5. This guy costs 1 less to cast for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. This guy triggers our commander. It's a great cost reducer. Usually you're getting a reduction of 4 or 5 snowballing creatures out there, plus he's a woolly mammoth that deadlifts, brother. Now you also have a little room for creatures that are just good or help protect your commander or great beaters or whatever. Shalai and Sigarda. Shalai used to be very pricey. It's about $2 right now and says you, planeswalkers you control, and other creatures you control have hexproof. Also has 4 green, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Great mana sink right there. We also have Sigarda, Font of Blessings. Other permanents you control have hexproof. You may look at the top of your library at any time. You may cast angel spells and human spells from there, blah blah blah. Just the fact that this gives Helga hexproof is really good in this deck. Now we also want to protect our board state, interact with our opponent's stuff. Thankfully we're in blue, but Helga has that restricted mana, right? Wrong, dude. Overcharged Amalgam. 2 blue creature zombie hordes, 3/3 with flash and flying. Has exploit. When this thing exploits a creature, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Very versatile spell, triggers our commander, and can exploit itself like any good OnlyFans creator. Speaking of which, check this lady out, the Sister of Silence. So this has a very similar effect, has flash, it's a 3/3. Psychic Abomination. When this enters the battlefield, counter target instant spell, sorcery spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. A little less efficient here, a little less broad. But you know, these cards are creatures, they trigger our commander, and they counter spells. You also have Frilled Mystic, Mystic Snake, very similar cards. Keep in mind that Helga adds 1 mana of any color, and those cards are cards that require multiple colors. And there are also a number of creatures that ETB and destroy things, but you may just be better running Beast Within, Generous Gift for that sheer utility. You know what I'm saying? Some of those cards are a little pricey, but sprinkle them in, brother. Anyways, man, very interesting commander. Lots of ways to build this, pretty broad. That's what they used to call me back in college, just kidding. You could also go with untap effects, ETB effects, add some blink combos if you wanted to. These colors are solidly in the blink archetype as well, but you're growing your commander, you may not want to be blinking it. Seems like a fun commander to hand over to a newer player, help them learn unintuitive but simple interactions. You often find yourself snowballing with 10 cards in hand, plopping out creatures and lands left and right. It's an incredible deck, man. Goldfish it if you want. I love it, dude. This is Kermit's mama, buddy. Nikki G, Better Commander, signing off.